Morning, everybody.
Thank you for joining. My name is Emil Martini, and I'm a policy market advisor at EGEC, the European Geothermal Energy Association. I would like to welcome you to this webinar called Expanding Renewables Horizons, Data Solution for Heating and Cooling. So why a webinar on data, you could ask? We think that this topic is quite important right now, because as EU countries prepare to promote local heating and cooling plans for municipalities, it is essential to explore from both a quantitative but also a qualitative perspective the hurdles that still exist to access renewable heating and cooling data at all levels. Thus, this workshop, which is organized by the REDI4HEAT project, will gather policy and technical experts to tackle critical challenges related to the availability and reliability of this data, and trying also to address the gaps and inconsistencies in national datasets, and proposing also some solution for a more efficient collection. So here is the agenda of today. So after my short introduction, there will be a first presentation will be about data management as key success factor for heating and cooling decarbonization by Frank Girard, which is a senior consultant at Trinomics. Then we will have also a perspective on cooling with Professor Javier Urcheguia, with a presentation linked to another project called Cooling Down, to have a perspective with a focus on the issue of cooling data, but also a perspective of on municipalities. Then in the second part, we will talk more about possible solutions with Estelle Payan, which will present as the Odyssey database on energy efficiency indicators and energy consumption. And then the last presentation, before having a panel, a Q&A session, let's say, will be by Valentin Fried on how member states are implementing heating and cooling related directives, and how this can be tracked also with a REDI4HEAT tool, which is called the REDI4HEAT policy tracker. So as I said, after this presentation, we will have time for a Q&A session. But I invite you to write already your questions as soon as you have it in the chat. Also because the first speaker, Frank Girard, will have to leave a bit sooner the webinar. So maybe especially for him, at the end of his first presentation, we can already gather some specific questions. Last information from my side, I was already explaining that this project is in the domain of the REDI4HEAT project. So I invite you to go to our website. REDI4HEAT is a live project, and the aim is of supporting the implementation of the RED provision on heating and cooling on one side, but also to assist member state and local authorities in the process of that implementation. So some recommendation will be issued about that, and this recommendation will be also complemented by capacity building events in the target countries, and also the development of a knowledge sharing platform and toolboxes for public authorities at national, regional, and local level. One of these tools is also the policy tracker, as you will see in the fourth presentation. So without further ado, I will leave the floor to our first speaker, which is Frank Girard, which is senior consultant at Trinomics. Frank, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Emil. So good morning, everyone. I will talk about data management from the perspective of data is and most of the time has to be considered as a key success factor for heating and cooling decarbonization. So the REDI4HEAT project is more about renewable in heating and cooling, but here we tackle this from the broader perspective of full decarbonization of heating and cooling. We can move to the first slide. The next, yeah, thanks, Victoria. So I will rapidly talk about the identification of key success factors, which was one of the first task in this project, broad project, identifying what is a successful factor to achieve decarbonization of heating and cooling. Reminds rapidly what is why data is critical to plan heating and cooling decarbonization, and then taking a couple of concrete example case studies at a different governance level, which was also important in this project to look at national but also at more decentralized level. We can move to the next slide. So the key success factor in practice, the first step was to identify these factors within heating and cooling plants, including NECPs, to identify what across member state is needed to achieve decarbonization of heating and cooling. And then we wanted to verify somehow these key success factors with some concrete practices. And this is where we started looking at more decentralized level. The decarbonization of heating and cooling is addressed from the national perspective throughout NECPs, but more and more, as we know, and Valentin will talk about this later on. The local authorities have more and more a role to play in decarbonizing heating and cooling. But I will leave it to him to talk about EED later on. So the practice is emerging across Europe to deal with plants at various levels, meaning that there is still a lot to do. However, something can already be extracted from the practice of some front runners in this case. We wanted to look at these decentralized cases, so mainly at regional or district level, but also at municipal level. So as I said, a key success factors, what we understand by key success factor is either a policy or a measure, either an underlying condition for the successful achievement of heating and cooling decarbonization. We can move to the next slide. Yeah, Victoria, thanks. So we went through 11 concrete cases on various topics. It's not the aim to discuss about them into details, just to give you an idea of the type of countries we did cover and the topics. The results and the finding were that when mapping key success factors at a national level and or a decentralized level, we find that there are a lot of similarities. So this did allow us to land on with the identification of key policy areas where we can still require policy actions. In a common and structured way at decentralized and national level. We can move to the next slide, Victoria. With this mapping, again, I guess you will receive the presentation. It's not the aim to cover everything. Just want to highlight some of the key success factors related to data and data management. So you can see on the right side at local level some of these policies, measures, and success factors which are related to data. The legal framework to open and decentralized energy data has been considered to be key in several cases. Awareness and access to information and capacity building, mainly access to information, and the support for management, coordination, and monitoring. All those are considered really key to successfully plan and decarbonize heating and cooling. We did cover also different all the concerned sectors to organize these key success factors, but I won't go into the detail at this stage. We can move to the next slide. So data is critical to plan heating and cooling decarbonization. Data is required to decarbonize heating and cooling on the supply side. Of course, what are the available renewable resources, but also assess the potential to supply heating and cooling. Demand side, no need, I think, to recall that we should look at renewable deployment and energy efficiency at the same time. So the current demand is key, but also its evolution, what is the densification of the demand and the potential synergies, of course, having a special concern for district heating in this case. Knowledge on infrastructure is needed, identification of available options for renewable supply, but also a knowledge on markets, sector coupling. I'm talking here about transport and electricity, of course, and then the identification of supporting policies, drivers, obstacles, and all influencing factors. All these information are needed to probably plan heating and cooling decarbonization. We can move to the next slide. And here I will start with the first case. The Lörrach district in Germany has taken the lead to organize with all its 35 municipalities heat planning. So a huge coordination work with all municipalities across the district. Yeah, you can find more information here, but I'd like mainly to discuss about what data has played as role. We can move to the next slide. So this project, which ran between 21 and 23, so it was an intercommunal heat planning for the district of Lörrach, was a pilot really to accompany and support all the cities and municipalities to plan. The goal was to reach climate neutrality for heat supply in the district by 2040. So this has been the final goal and timeline. And of course, yeah, this project was run by the district with the support of the land. Baden-Württemberg was a great supporting in the project. So demand data was the first step to develop the heat planning. There was a collection of data, as example, via chimney sweeps, energy suppliers, network operators, and industries. So long journey to collect all the data. These actors are according to legislation in the land. obliged to provide the data to municipalities. So in the frame of the project, there was a mandate given to a service provider. We can imagine that municipalities don't have the capacity and resources to manage such projects. So it was run by a service provider. Data concern mainly nominal heat output, age of the systems, fuel used, mode of operation, location assignment of the exhaust system, among others. But of course, the volume and level of consumption was also collected. Data were anonymized, and some extrapolations were needed because when starting to collect data, it's not always obvious that we will get all the required data. So it takes always a little bit of time. And the collection took twice the time expected at the beginning of the project. So this is really to emphasize the importance not to underestimate the time needed to collect the data. So this is about the demand data, but of course, in parallel, the district did run the assessment of the potential of renewable sources. This was done more at the district level to look also at different synergies between the different municipalities. This was needed. All this information was required to elaborate scenarios for decarbonization at each municipal level. Voilà, that's one example of how the process of data was really key to successfully manage the development of these scenarios across the district. This was also key to ensure a smooth collaboration between the different entities, between the district together with the different municipal authorities. We can move to the next example. This is now again in Germany at the city level, city of Munich. In 2020, SWM, which is the municipal utility company, and the city of Munich did commission a study, a heat study for the future of the heating sector in the city. The idea was to have a long-term concept to reach the climate goals. Here, the city target to be climate neutral by 35, which was 2090 City Council resolution. The main outcomes of this work, of this study, was first to strengthen the cooperation between SWM and the city, and to inform all players, including building owners, occupiers, energy suppliers, etc. So there was a huge work of coordination and cooperation between all the players around sharing the data. Better coordination of activities of various stakeholders. So the more data, the best plan of investment. Transforming district heating was also high on the agenda. There is an ambition to increase significantly the share of heat supplied throughout district heating. And then another aspect is that the the city took a neighborhood approach, which was found highly reliable with regard to concrete cases to decarbonize. So rather than looking at either building by building level or at very broad level, it was an intermediate level to come with synergies and with very concrete infrastructure investment. So this was possible thanks to the strong collaboration with SWM, so the utility company which is in charge of gas supply and also district heating. We can move to the next slide. So access to reliable data as a starting point. Originally, the city has its own energy plan, but not relying on very accurate data. So working with SWM did provide them the required level of information, way more detailed. They started both to redesign and reorient the strategic city-wide heating and cooling planning. So this collaboration around data sharing was really key to come with a long-term plan. SWM did provide data, of course, but also tools for the city for better planning. The city remains the main responsible for heating and cooling, but with a strong and continuous cooperation with the utility. As a result, heating and cooling now relies on more detailed and reliable data. As said already, it serves to inform other actors, building owners, suppliers, to think about, and industries, to think about the suitable options to climate neutral heating and cooling. And then the planning helps concretely also to coordinate activities and investment, as said already. Just one key consideration, SWM is a public entity, meaning that they're more keen to share data than probably a private entity would be. So all this really bounded around data sharing. We can move to the last example, and I will speed up a bit. So in France, this is more at national level. We will look at decision taken by the government to impose the sharing of data. So originally, local authorities had limited access to consumer data. It was therefore very hard to plan heating and cooling. But since 2018, the Energy Transition for Green Growth Act mandates grid operators and energy suppliers to release certain data, including for local authorities. So this is really key for local authorities to be able to plan probably the decarbonization. Data sets centrally available and freely accessible while complying with the GDPR, which is of course always an important concern. Data collection and management. Operators have created open data platform. Some players have developed observatories to allow the easy use of the data. And yeah, it collects data on district heat, on renewable, on the energy performance certificate, and etc. But it's not the aim to go into all details. The Act outlines a progressive approach to data sharing. I will come back rapidly on that in a few minutes. We can move to the next slide. Thanks. What has changed for local authorities and in heating and cooling decarbonization? So data access is crucial for all, for their energy transition, to have a better understanding of current consumption, but also on technology, market development, etc. A transparent legal framework is really needed for that, as it provides very clear rules on what can be shared for which purpose. So this is really important, and it gives a reassurance throughout the entire process about the compliance with GDPR as example. So an important dialogue has been conducted with the industry to ensure that they went and they did follow the approach of sharing the data. Institutional players utilize data for various purposes. So you can see an example with NRESO here developed by Cerema. So the availability, public availability of data, plus also the fact that these data can be managed and used in the various format. The initial benefits and tools were unclear, so that was a concern at the beginning of the new legislative framework. But after a couple of years, it's now evident that the data significantly contributed to at least renewable progress, but probably also progressively on other decarbonization aspects. Open data initiatives have standardized methodologies for network studies, enhancing reliability and benefiting the industrial sector. So standardization is really important, and open data practices curbed uneven quality, but also commercialization of data. So the fact that these data are now publicly available allow to ensure first quality and empower directly local authorities, which are not anymore relying on data providers. We can move to the next and last slide. So of course, improvement is still needed about quality and quantity of data. Pressing need to enhance data accuracy and facilitate the sharing is still an issue. It's a process, step by step. Efforts are underway to maximize the use of existing databases, to make link with other systems like property tax, energy performance diagnosis systems, and etc. The success factors to appropriate data management system: one player centralizing and processing all the data, requiring a structure to coordinate, collate, and process the raw data. So one player to centralize. Of course, that's always the approach in France, but it has shown successful realization. Legal framework for open data, a collaborative approach with the industry, and standardization is needed. Yeah, I think I have a last slide. For advice, just for replication in other member states, start without aiming at exhaustiveness. That's the first thing. It's really a step-by-step process. and the importance to get the buy-in of all the concerned stakeholders, including the industry and all operators, is to show advantages of the project along its implementation. Takes time, so don't be impatient. The collection format should be thought quite carefully. Think about easy to read, easy to use data, and then always try to demonstrate the added value of data collection efforts. A couple of advice for the similar implementation. So data is really considered to be central in France for the proper planning of heating and cooling decarbonization. Thank you very much for your attention. Emile, I give it back to you.
Thank you, Frank, for your exhaustive presentation. I see we have a couple of questions that I would ask you now before you have to leave. So the first one is quite practical, as the question is, how can we now access to the final reports on the studies mentioned at district, city, and national levels?
Yeah, the report are on, I think, on our website. I need to check, but they should be. So the report plus the specific fiches. So for each of the cases we have a fiche, so that's available on our website.
Yeah. And the second is more on the content, as it is asked that as it is very important to acquire data for developing purposes, what efforts are being carried to acquire data that validate that actual developed project and installed systems are performing as expected to accomplish decarbonization and other sustainable metrics? Can you point out any project doing just this?
Well, sorry, the sentence is so long.
So long, yes.
Whatever the to create data that validate the actual development. Maybe Enzo, if you could join quickly. Another sustainability metric. So yeah, the efforts. If it's about the efforts, I understand. They're quite important, and the example of the Loire district first, and then we can have the same assessment for France. It takes a lot of time to collect the data, but this is really needed. So the efforts should be really there. Otherwise, without the data, it's quite hard to arrive with a proper planning. So I'm not sure whether this is a question, but yeah, just don't underestimate the efforts needed to manage the data when starting such project, and this will be the case again. Valentin will discuss about this later on, for large cities having to plan for their heating and cooling. It has to be a step-by-step approach, but data collection is really important.
Thank you, Frank. Maybe a last quick question from my side, as you showed us several examples. So the question would be, is there a key lever or a key actor, talking about, for example, the demand data, to collect this data, or there is something like a one-fit-all solution? So what do you think of that?
No, there is no one fit for all solution. It's always a case by case. Just taking the example of L'Eure district, they did work with chimney sweeps. which is quite unusual. But this is really this was really the way for them to collect the more accurate data. But maybe in other situations you will collect the same data with other players. So no, it's really a case by case, and always think about yeah, progressive. Don't try to manage all the data in once. It's really complex.
Thank you very much, Frank.
Welcome.
So now we have our second presentation by Professor Javier Utriguia.
Good morning.
Javier, the floor is yours.
Can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay, so I will try to share my screen now and hope everything works. Can you see the presentation?
Yes, we can see it. Thank you.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. I'm pleased to be here today to talk about cooling, the cooling perspective from a project called Cooling Down, which focuses exactly on this problem of cooling, which is tightly related with the heating and cooling sector, obviously, but it has different perspective and it has a different parameters too that have to be taken into account for governance. We are also going to talk, or I'm going to talk a lot about data and the importance of data, and especially in the perspective of what are the decisions to be taken by the municipal authorities in this case, in regard, in this case, to the cooling sector. But I have my screen is not. Sorry, that my screen has. I think I've stopped sharing. It may be possible. Okay. Hope you can see the screen now.
Yes, now it works. The second slide. Yeah.
I had a couple of problems with the mouse and. Okay, so first of all, to turn back just a little bit. First of all, some insights about data, about the importance or the relevance of the impact of the cooling sector in general, and then I'm going also to report on some case studies we had in the project Cooling Down at different levels, national, at the local, and also municipal level. And then I'm going to talk also about how we can deal with data at municipal decision level. And here I'm going to talk about a different framework that was mentioned by Frank Gerard, which is the Sustainable Energy Action Plans, which also deal with decarbonization, with the energy sectors, in this case at municipal level. And in Cooling Down, we have done some, let's say, suggestions. We have suggested a framework to deal with cooling, and which would also be valid for heating in this framework of this Sustainable Energy Action Plans. This will be the last part of my presentation. So here, I'm just going to talk a little bit about the importance of cooling, and I will start to talk about electrification and why electrification. Because electrification is tightly connected to the cooling problem. Here we can see some statistics taken from the European scenario here, and what this shows is from different let's say action plan or legal framework that are foreseen, like F55 REPowerEU, or even more ambitious plan, which is called radical action. What is the amount of electricity that is forecasted to be consumed by the EU 27 in 2050? To give you some idea, we are now at the level of 2.7 terawatts. So these scenarios, they foresee a substantial increase in the electricity consumption, and one could think about the transport being the main responsible for this increase. And indeed, you can see here in the different scenarios that transport will take an important share of this electricity consumption. But here you can see also the building sector is especially relevant in that regard. So the building sector is aimed or is foreseen to consume much more electricity than nowadays, and partly it will be due to the cooling. Here in these other statistics, which is a worldwide statistic from the EIA, is the forecast of how many systems, how many cooling systems will be installed in the world. Here you can see this green line is representing the European Union, which is a small share in the world, but it has been and it will be a substantial increase. This is due to several topics like the increase of temperatures, the more and more share that heat pumps will have in the energy systems, in the heating and cooling systems, even problems which I will address today, like the urban heat island effects, which will also increase the need for cooling in the cities. So here you will see that electricity consumption, electrification will be tightly connected to the rise in cooling. But one thing when we started cooling down, we felt is that it's very scarce information. We don't have enough information or enough data on how this exactly looks like and what are the factors that will, in the different regions in Europe, for instance, drive this increased need for cooling. So we decided in the project to look at different scales. And one of the systems to make this assessment was to use modeling. Here I will talk about one of the tools here, which is the Urban Code Pro model, which allows to really look at the building stocks and study the different buildings in a, let's say, simplified way, let's say pixel by pixel in a city, to look at the rising demands for cooling and what this would imply in regard to the need for electricity to cool down the homes. Here, the Technische Universität at München was responsible for this model, and this model was used to extract some general idea on what is the impact of the electricity consumption in the cooling here in comparison with the demand. Here, what we see really in this graph at the right part is from the results of the model, what is the overall electricity consumption, which would be the pale blue bar, and in comparison with that, what will be the theoretical electricity demand forecasted by this model in the actual situation. And this highlights, or this represents the share or the importance that cooling demand, cooling consumptions have in the nowadays electricity sector. From these figures, from these numbers, we could derive some first estimations on what is the share in the electricity consumption nowadays in different countries, country-wise. And this was this first pilot to look at the different countries. And here you can see Belgium, for instance, with a 95% of space cooling demand in the electricity, or Spain with almost 8%. The different countries were characterized by this model in order to understand what is this share of the cooling demand. By the way, the country that showed most sensitivity or highest share of cooling demand was Romania, in this case, with almost 14% of electricity devoted to cooling. So that was a first general overview on what is the share or the impact of cooling in the different sectors. In this case, sorry, this is not this is the CO2 emissions, not the electricity demand per se, but they are obviously very tightly connected to each other. Here, our second study was more granular. We really wanted to look at what are the driving factors of such rising cooling, and particularly what would be the perspectives of a rising cooling demand into actual scenarios, like we choose here a Munich district called Unterhaching, and the other pilot studied by the University of Padua was the Belzoni district in Padua city here, where a large number of buildings and residential school service were, let's say, more in detail studied and parameterized by means of a different tool, which is called the Eureka simulation framework. This is a model which in a more detail than the former one, which is less detailed. It was calling before this Urban Code Pro. This tool really allows to make a more detailed characterization of a different structure, a different building, taking into account, for instance, archetypes of building structure, but also existing appliances in the buildings. It can use or deal with the weather files, so this allows to make also projections on what would be these cooling demands if the temperatures, if the weather is changing. And that was really the aim of this pilot, also to look at the sensitivity for the future. And also it can include scheduling so that you can adjust these simulations to the actual thermal demand. The results of this simulation were interesting. Here you can see, for instance, if we look at what would be the prospective cooling consumption in this district from this 8%, which agrees very well with the urban cold prognosis, which we saw before, we would end up in a much higher consumption in 2050 of over 17%. Here, as you can see, due to these effects I have been mentioning, like this urban heat island effect, which means that in the center of the city there is a artificial increase in the temperatures and obviously in the cooling demands because also of all these heat sources that are releasing heat into the ambient. So this exacerbates the cooling demands, and the projection indicates a significant increase for 2050 for Padua, but also here you can see that was for München, but for Padua this increase is even more substantial, up to 49% in let's say in the worst scenario. So what you can see here from these graphs is that not only cooling cooling electricity consumption is relevant nowadays, but it will grow more and more in the future, and it will have to take into account this type of effects like OHI effect and the increase in the appliance and the level of penetration of the appliances. So this is a very serious item and a very serious topic to deal with. Last case studies with it is one can question itself that these are of course simulations, what we have dealt with. What about data? What data do we have really to underscore and to reaffirm this type of figures I've shown before? So we did a third study here. This is from the Spanish city of Crevillente, in which we had the data from the local DSO, the distribution company, which covers 100% of the city. So we could study very in detail what are the electricity consumptions of the different substations in the city, more than 200. And we did a statistical characterization of what is the relationship of the electricity consumption with the temperatures in this case. And as you can see here, these electricity consumptions have to do with the temperature, and you can see in the right part, as in the summer comes here, you can see, and you watch clearly from the statistical approach, that in the right part of the graph, when the temperature difference is positive towards zero, that means a statistically very significant increase in the consumption of electricity, even 2 or 3-fold. So the problem is not only the amount of electricity you are consuming, but also it's how or when this electricity is consumed. And this electricity consumption is concentrated in a very low number of hours. And that means that the electricity grid has to be prepared in the future to cope with the high tension in the electricity consumption due to these increased temperatures. You can see very clearly in the right part that there is a high sensitivity to cooling needs nowadays in the actual city in Spain. In the left part, what you can see is that this sensitivity is not present so in such a high amount, and this is due to the fact that the heating here is mainly fossil-based with gas. So here what you can read from this graph is really that in many parts of the southern Europe you have a fossil-based heating demand coverage, but when you go to the cooling part, there is nowadays even a large problem that the grid in the future have to be adapted with very costly means to cope with this enlarged consumption of cooling. So I hope these 3 scenarios you can see here other data, and this also reaffirms this 8%, as you can see here in the left part of the share of annual electricity consumption, in this case based on actual data and actual consumption of electricity. So our cooling down project gives a clear picture on what is the impact in terms of consumption, in terms of emissions of the cooling consumptions. But what about the decisions that municipal action have to promote to really cope with these problems we are seeing from these graphs? What are the actions that municipalities can put into force to help in this heating and cooling decarbonization in the residential sector? So here we looked at from a different perspective, and we looked at the paradigm, which is called the Strategy, Energy and Climate Action Plans. So the advantage towards the remarks that were very interesting made by Frank Gerard towards these heat plans in different countries of Europe is that these action plans are all around Europe. You can see that more than 12,000 municipalities, 11,000 have signed such type of agreements. But the difference with the heat plants in Germany, for instance, is that they are not compulsory. These are means more from the political side to engage cities with decarbonization in all sectors, but particularly also in the residential sector. Here you can see a map in Europe about how these SECAP cities or signatories of these SECAPs are distributed in Europe. So you can see here that most or many of these SECAP cities are in the south countries, and this again points to the importance that cooling is also taken into account in these policies for reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 2030. The tasks are very, very ambitious. There are declarations about 55% by the cities. But what we see here in reality is that many of the cities, they don't have even the competences nor the data really to understand what is their situation in this context of the SECAPs and how they can have a plan to really start such ambitious greenhouse gas reduction plans. So what our aim in cooling down is to start giving some guidance, some data, and some information that could help to municipality actors or decision makers to start understanding what is the situation and to start also monitoring what could be the impact of their future measures in that sector. So first of all, what we did is to survey what is the situation of the SECAPs, in this case, in the cities that were part of the project, of cooling down project, like Valencia, Munich, Padua, or Orléans, to see what is let's say, the reality of SECAPs in these cities with a survey. So where we ask the cities whether they have such a plan, where this plan is available for the public, it can be known, whether there's an emission inventory, and whether the cooling measures are included in those plans, in their buildings. So what we found out is that many of the cities have indeed a plan, but only two of those cities, like Munich and Berlin, the Germans, they had some mention about renewable cooling measures in these SECAP plans. So what we see is that really the plan are existing, but the measures, or in particular in the cooling sector, are lacking, are not present. So what we have tried in the project is to start giving some methodology, some indication on how these measures could be taken into account, how they could be integrated and developed into such plans. So what I show here is a scheme with a system we developed within the project for cooling. Here, the system is called CITE, and it takes into account, I'm not going to go too much into detail of this scheme. You can look at it more quietly and at home if you want to look at this presentation. But it takes into account the technical and the jurisdictional or legal framework to see, for instance, if you have any jurisdiction to carry out actions, and if there is a possibility that the municipality can carry out actions, then start to undertake several gathering of data that includes the costs, the inventory of emissions by their by their buildings, and also taking into account CAPEX and OPEX considerations for possible funding sources for these measures. And it is also very important for us that the contracting has into account, that contracting or procurement of the technologies for cooling has to take into account the available technologies, the best state of the art, in order to be accounted to ensure that good technologies, that efficient technologies enter into the system, because this is of paramount importance. So this also was integrated into this SecUp templates, which at the end of the day is the type of document that has to be shared with the Covenant of Mayors structure in order to visualize the measures and the monitoring of these measures by the municipalities. So here is a collection of indicators we included in these templates here, like how much renewable cooling energy there is available, the consumptions, the seasonal efficiency ratios, which is very important to understand the efficiency of the given technologies, and what are the amount of CO2 emission reductions, even per euro invested, which is a good measure to see whether a given measure is techno-economically efficient or not. So here you can see these indicators described, so you can take a look at them and even come with some questions if you think there are some doubts here. So the aim here was through maps. I'm going to go a little bit more faster because of the time constraints, to be able to give the municipality an actual map of where there are buildings, because essentially municipalities have a capacity of their own buildings, but they can also influence the private sector. Here for the SecUp itself, we developed maps in order to show the annual cooling demands of the buildings. You can see here some examples. We did this in the actual city of Paterna, where we also have made some installations of a geothermal cooled heat pump, which is also integrated into this plan, even to showcase how monitoring of such a plan could be undertaken. And you can even develop some more extensive, also aimed at the public sector, cooling demand map, or even heat island map here also for the city of Paterna, in which you can show where are these urban heat island effects present and how this can impact in the not only the public but also in the private consumptions of electricity, in order to make a better planning. And just for finishing my presentation, this is the template that the municipality can, from our plan, can let's say, can fill with their measures, and having into account all these indicators, which are very important in order to understand what could be the impact of a given measure, of a given funding, of a given investment in their buildings, and also in aiming at the monitoring of this measure, how this can be reported throughout the years, not only for Covenant of Mayors, but also to systematize and to be able to make a follow-up, a monitoring of the impact of such investments, which for us is a very, very important point, because if you just put the data on the table, but there is no guidance on how to use them, first of all, and also how then to drive the consequences of what this data means, then it's more difficult for the decision maker to really find the right path. This templates and this program was done in collaboration with company Geminis Tools, which it's a consultancy company which has this system called CITE in order to help the decision makers to find better ways towards decarbonization. And with this, I end my presentation, just highlighting our conclusions. We have seen the importance of cooling in the present and future of the electricity demand. We have analyzed effects such as rising temperatures, urban heat island, and increased AC stock, and how this will impact very substantially electricity demand in the future, and also highlighting the essential need for efficient cooling, not only cooling, but efficient cooling. This is a demand for the future, in which Cooling Down has been working a lot to identify which technologies will be more efficient for the future. And not only that, we have also devised some methodology to be used for the cities for integration into these important SecUps, and developed some templates and some case study with a city in the neighborhood of Valencia. So thank you very much for your attention, and I'm open for any question.
Thank you, Javier. I think we can keep then the question for the final Q&A. So I will leave directly the floor to Estelle Pignon for her presentation about the policy database. Still referring yours.
I will stop sharing. Okay?
Yes. That's it.
I think you still need to unmute yourself.
You're muted, yeah, mistake. Just have to unmute yourself.
Thank you very much. So welcome everyone. My name is Estelle Payan. I'm working at Enerdata. I've been working on the Odyssey project for 4 years now. And I will present you what kind of heating and cooling data you can find in the Odyssey databases. So first, a short introduction of the Odyssey project. It is also a life clean energy transition project funded by a LIFE program. It has been running over for more than 30 years now. It is coordinated by the Energy Transition from France agency, the ADEME, with the support of 2 technical coordinators, Enerdata for the Odyssey database and Fraunhofer for the MUR database. The project is based on a network of more than 40 national partners, and this network covers the EU member states, the energy community parties, as well as Switzerland. You can find all the materials and the results of the project on the Odyssey website. So first, let's focus on the Odyssey database. This database has been designed to monitor progress in energy efficiency in European countries, particularly in the EU member states in the context of the Energy Efficiency Directive. You can find in the Odyssey database data and energy efficiency indicators up to 2023. This data is from different sources. First, we have data from Eurostat for aggregate data, such as the data that we can find in energy balance, so the consumption by sectors, for example. We also have data collected by national partners, which is the detailed data, for example, data by type of vehicles or by end use. And this data is supplemented by early estimates for 2023 computed by Enerdata. All these data and indicators are available in a database and 5 data tools that allow to have a nice visualization of some types of data and indicators. And I have indicated the website where you can find all of them. In Odyssey database, we have heating and cooling data mainly for 2 sectors, households and services. Here I have listed all the type of data that you can find for households. I will not list everything, but you can see that we have consumption by end use and by carrier for all end use, but as we are interested in heating and cooling, we have data for space heating, water heating, and air cooling. We have also equipment rates. So, for example, stock of dwelling by heating type, heating fuel, how many dwellings are heated with petroleum products or gas or electricity. Stock of dwellings by type of heating, if it is individual heating or central heating, and equipment rate in air conditioning. We also have more general data, such as heating and cooling degree days, number of dwellings built per year, average floor area of dwellings, efficiency data, such as energy performance certificates, renovation, etc. And finally, we have quite a lot of different unit consumption by end use, unit consumption per square meter or per dwelling, unit consumption that only covers the electricity part of the consumption or the whole final consumption, unit consumption in useful energy or in final energy, etc. But of course, we, as all databases, we do not have a full cover. So I have summed up the availability of data in a little table. It's interesting to see that we have data since 1990, which is a very long period. We cover the non-EU countries are less well covered because they have integrated the projects only during the two last years. And we see that the more difficult data to collect are the equipment rates, because it's very detailed, high value added data that are difficult to collect. On the other end, consumptions or degree days are much more easy to collect. You have also a little picture of what the database looks like. For the services, we also have consumption by end use and by carrier for space heating, water heating, air cooling, and the other end uses. And also more general data, also floor area by branch, value added, employment data, etc. And you can see that something that you may already know, that the services sector is very often much less well covered than the other sectors. So the availability rate of data is much lower than for the household sector. Still, we have quite a lot of interesting data. In comparison with the other project, this is all quite macro data. It's at the level, at the national level, not at the community level, but it allows comparison between countries, different type of countries, for example, South countries which may have important cooling issues, or northern countries which have more heating issues, etc. Now I will present you the other database, the MUIR database. In fact, it's a kind of public catalog of policies and measures that are promoting energy efficiency. For each measure, there is a fact sheet written by the network of national partners, which is constituted of ministries, energy agencies, etc. So they are really specialists of these policies and measures. In the database, you have the possibility of to filter by sector, by end use, by impact, if the policy or measure has a high impact in terms of reduction of energy consumption or CO2 emissions. The type of measure, is it an information campaign or a financial measure, a subsidy, etc. And the year of implementation, and quite a lot of other criteria. To give you an idea, for the household sectors, you can find almost 200 measures. For the service sectors, 85 measures, and for industry, it's less well covered, but there is still more than 30 measures. So it may, even if it's for the vast majority, national measures, national policies, it can allow you to see what are the policies and measures possible, maybe the best practices, which agencies are putting in place these policies for heating and cooling, etc. To end my presentation, I wanted to present you an example of using Odyssey and Muir data to analyze heating and cooling. A partner of the project, Anna Volkova from Tallinn University of Technology, had a webinar on district heating and cooling in October last year. So you can look at the webinar. There is a recording and the slides. And we proposed, we had quite a lot of other webinars, not about the heating and cooling topic necessary, but on different topics linked to energy efficiency. So yeah, you have all the links if you are interested in our project. And on the website, you can find other materials such as policy briefs, country profiles, sectoral analysis, etc. Still on energy efficiency more widely, but it might be interesting for heating and cooling analysis. Thank you for your attention, and I will be glad to answer to your questions during the Q&A session.
Thank you very much, Estelle. So now it's the turn of Valentin Fried for the last presentation on the REDI4HEAT policy tracker.
Hello, everyone. In a second, I will share my screen. I hope you can see my full screen. Yes, I'll keep it short. Thanks to everyone who's still here. My name is Valentin Fried. I'm working for the German Energy Agency. I'm part of the REDI4HEAT consortium, and I'm presenting the policy tracker to you, which is a direct output of the REDI4HEAT project. What is it? It shows the relevant EU regulations for heating and cooling from the Fit for 55 package, namely the EED, the RED, and the EPBD. And it shows how the individual member states have transposed these regulations into their national framework, or if they still have to fulfill these requirements. And yeah, it's supposed to offer a low barrier starting point for research, for example, and also as an inspiration for policymakers. But let's go first into the agenda of what I'll be showing you. So first, what is the added value of the policy tracker? Then I'll provide a short sneak peek and list the advantages of the policy tracker and shortly give an insight on how the data has been derived. The added value. So there are many valuable trackers out there. The policy tracker, which we came out with, is just covering a very wide scope. It covers the central heating and cooling directives, and it provides a good overview over the entire heating cooling regulatory framework of the EU. It's transnational, so it offers the ability to compare between countries, and it's not targeted on blaming or shaming, so it doesn't give ratings on how good or bad a country has fulfilled the requirements, more like it gives you direct access to the initiatives, and then everybody can judge themselves. We can look inside the tracker. I must tell you in advance, the tracker is not yet online. It will be online by the end of the month. As you know, in big projects with many partners cooperating across many different time zones and borders. There are always some delays, but I'm very confident you will have access to the tool not later than the end of the month. So on the starting page, we first see, maybe I can point it out to you. Not sure if you can see that. On the right side, you have a short introduction to the tracker and then a map. We have 5 energy agencies from 5 different participating countries. So in the first stage of the tracker, we have covered these countries: Germany, Poland, Croatia, Greece, and Portugal. And below you have a list of all the identified regulations from the Energy Efficiency Directive, the Renewable Energy Directive, and the Energy Performance of Building Directives that are related to heating and cooling. It's a list of 42 requirements, so you see it's quite accessible, it's not so overwhelming, and it shows 1 box per requirement. Here it shows the EED requirements, and it's not very technocratic, so we try to condense it in easy to understand requirement and not like very legal language. And then you can see just what it is required. Then you see in what regulation and in what paragraph. And then you can see which country has already transposed this requirement. In this case, who has regulations that must be fulfilled, that big municipalities establish a local heating and cooling plan. And for some of the requirements, we have also marked solutions as a best practice. For this example here, it's the solutions by Germany and Poland. And like you can have these cards for all of the 42 requirements. And if you click on one country, then you get forwarded to the country page. I have scrolled a bit down, so you don't see the exact same requirements again. But the country overview just summarizes all the initiatives by the countries that are related to or relatable to the EU directives. It shows again which requirement is fulfilled. Then it shows how it has been fulfilled in like transposed in the national context. And here you can see, for example, the example of Germany. There's, for this requirement, there's 3 initiatives. Oh, no, sorry, there's this one initiative. It's the Competence Center of Communal Heating Transition, and then it explains shortly what it is and gives you a link where you can find more information. So far, how it will be looking like. The advantages are that it's very easy to use. It's easy to navigate. It's curated content, so it has like the initiatives have been submitted by the experts from the energy agencies, and it brings you directly to the actual country pages of the initiatives or regulations where you can deep dive into further research. Yes, the data collection and implementation, as I said, has been within our REDI4HEAT project by the 5 different energy agencies, and the technical implementation is currently been done by the European Heat Pump Association. Yes, you can find the policy tracker on the website of the European Heat Pump Association, and I'm happy for your questions. I'm interested in what you think about the easy accessible solution on entry into research on policies that transpose EU regulations.
Thank you, Valentin. You're still in time to put your questions in the chat. In the meantime, I'll maybe ask with a couple of questions for our speakers. So the first question is to both Estelle and Valentin, as you showed us different tools. So if you could a bit tell us what to sum up. So what is the target group of these two trackers, and how do you see these tools to be if they can be like complementary in this kind of search of both policies and data? So Valentin, if you want to start, yeah.
Yes, the idea was developed to give policymakers of the individual countries an easy overview of, first of all, what is the status of their own implementation of the EU regulations, what regulations are even there. I think is not so clear to everyone, and then also to get inspiration by the solutions of other countries. So policymakers is the first target group, and then anyone who's working in the field, from students to local governments, all interested people who are not experts for specific unique regulations, who don't know already the deep dive of everything. I think it's a very good starting point.
Yeah, I think all these similar data tools target almost the same groups. First, the policymakers, as you mentioned, also the European Commission, because these data tools and databases should help to monitor if the targets are achieved or not, because in the energy efficiency directives, each country set targets for energy reductions, CO2 emissions reduction, etc. And also, as Valentin mentioned, for academic purpose, so researchers, students, and of course, if private companies are interested in this data, they are welcome to use it. I think that both tools can complement each other, because I think they are not really on the exact same topic. We are more focused on energy efficiency. Maybe it's more wide, and on the energy efficiency directive, when the tool presented by Valentin is more heating and cooling, if I understood well.
Yeah, if I can add to this, like there's so many tools out there, and I also find it very impressive how full of data and valuable information the Mure tool is. It is just also not only heat and cooling focused, and I think for a starting point, it can be quite overwhelming. I think it's more expert work related tool, and I think they can very well work together. And yes, we will see how the reception of the policy tracker, the REDI4HEAT policy tracker is.
Thank you. So my question to Javier would be, so what about also the accessibilities from, for example, the municipality side and from the calling side of such tools? Do you think that these kind of tools can be an actual instrument also for local authorities to have a look at this data, and also to be able to differ from the heating or the electricity side and the cooling side? Or is there something more specific that it's needed for municipalities, and from the the cooling perspective, I would say.
Okay, when we talk about municipalities and local decision making, we have to take into account that there's a very huge variety of realities. Okay, it's not the same if you're talking about a big city of 1 million of inhabitants, which they have a powerful technical staff, which is obviously very keen to use this type of data, and they are capable of. They have the understanding that if we are talking of most of the vast majority of cities which are below, even in Spain, 5,000, 10,000 inhabitants, which they will really have not so much access, not because of the accessibility of the data itself per se, but because of the lack of staff probably or technical assistance to really make optimal use of this data. So these type of municipalities, they need additional tools. They need also mechanisms or processes really to help them in the guidance, more not only the availability of the data itself, but also in the rest of the process. Like we highlighted the importance of procurement, which we are talking about technology. This type of municipalities mostly lack expertise to really be able to make a significant, let's say, procurement in many of these type of new technologies. Right? For instance, think about geothermal heat pumps or things like that. So this is also an important and needed element. And the third very important part is the monitoring. So how are the processes to monitor really the implementation? So, and this also talks about how you structure the information that is gathered generated by the organization itself, the municipality itself. They produce a lot of information, but how is this information to be connected to all these, let's say, general data sets which are much more, what I would say, the environment. And this also requires new guidelines and new approaches, and particularly for these small municipalities, which find themselves lost in this maze of information sometimes.
Thank you, Javier. So indeed, you mentioned then also two other important points. One about skills, especially in small municipalities, so having people that can access this kind of information. And the other one, of course, is the difficulty in monitoring all this kind of information. And as Valentin and Estelle said before, it's also the big amount of data that is out there and the different tools that it's difficult sometimes to look at and see specifically which kind of data are needed for the specific person searching for this data. And to add and to conclude this conversation, I would say that it's also important to talk about these issues, to showcase the good instruments that are there, the best cases as we saw today, especially also from Javier and from Frank before, because sometimes also showing a practical case and a way that already shows us that it actually worked out in a specific city, municipality, or region in Europe is sometimes is also the best way to spread the word about good practices. So I thank all the speakers once again for the insightful presentation. I thank also all the participants. Just to remind you, we're gonna send you also the presentation. Thank you again on behalf of the Ready4It project, and have a good day.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.